Hey folks, I'm Troy and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about Shockwave plugin errors. I've been working on this problem and I've done tons of research and testing over the past several months. I see a lot of people post that they've only gotten this since the last update or whatever, and that may have been the only time you started to see it, or the only project you worked on that gave you the problem. But this problem has been going on for many months, and probably helped hundreds of people at least. And in almost every one of those cases, the problem came down to one of the things in this list I'm going to go over today. So it's going to be kind of a definitive list of Shockwave plugin errors and what to look for. And it's not guaranteed to find your problem, but you have to keep an open mind and be willing to do the research and try to figure out which one of these things might apply to you, because there's no real simple easy fix to this. There might be, honestly I might be sounding a little snarky in some of this video just because I get a lot of people who want to argue about the problem and say that can't be the problem. My computer can't be the problem. My internet speed can't be the problem. And what I want people to understand is that unless you've tested your internet speed today, or unless you tested it a few minutes ago, you don't know your internet's not the problem. Unless you know the difference between an E1 processor and an i5 computer processor, you can't say your computer's not the problem. If you don't know the answer to that right now, you don't know that's not the problem. So you can't make assumptions that just because you bought a computer 3 months ago or whatever, that is not the problem you're having. So I'm going to go down through this list. I'm going to put links on the screen to other videos I've made. I've done quite a few videos on this issue for each of the causes, and I have a blog post that I'll put in the video description down below that has links to all these videos as well. But there's a lot of different videos and causes for this issue, and the problem is there's no easy fix, so it takes a lot of patience to figure out what your cause is. And so the first most common thing I see probably is a project with too many layers in it. So if your project has 30, 40 layers, 50 layers, or maybe 100 layers, if you've imported an SVG file that you made or bought off of Etsy or something, then you probably have too many layers in your project. And this can be compounded by internet speed and computer performance too. So we'll get to those things in a minute, but too many layers in your project will cause this, especially if you have a project saved and when you open it, it takes a really long time and gives you the Shockwave plugin error. Then there's a good chance that you have too many layers. I had someone send me a rhinestone template they purchased off of Etsy a couple of weeks ago and asked me to look at it, and all the little circles for the rhinestones, there were over 1,000 of them in that template. So in every one of those objects was a separate layer, so it is trying to import 1,000 layers. And so there's ways to fix that the designers can fix, but you need to understand that those things will cause problems in design space, and you have to fix them before the image comes into design space. So if you have a project that you've worked on, maybe you've put 3 or 4 hours into it, saved it, and then you can't get it to open back up, there is a workaround using Firefox. So if you have the Firefox browser installed, or if you don't, you can go install it. There is a video I made. Here's the link to it right there on the screen, and I encourage you to click on these links and go pause this video, go watch those videos, and then come back to this one and continue it. Don't skip parts of the videos, listen to what I say, and follow things very closely. So if you have a project that's like that you want to kind of rescue, you can use that technique to open it and maybe save it as 4 or 5 different files with different pieces of the project in it and split it up and lighten the load, still accomplish the same thing. So the next thing would be complicated fonts like chalkboard style fonts or distressed fonts. The reason is all of those have those little tiny cuts and details on them. So those fonts like that have too many nodes or too many cuts, and they will cause Shockwave plugin errors. If other things are involved, and sometimes if you just put too many or too many different fonts on a page, it can cause it. But usually it's those distressed fonts and chalkboard style fonts, things like that, that you want to avoid. If you have a project, it is complicated by having too many cuts, too many welds, too many slices. Those kind of things can also complicate your project and make it difficult for Design Space to work with and give you the Shockwave plugin errors, just like too many layers can. So every time you weld and slice, it kind of makes it a little bit more complicated for your project, and will cause that. If you've uploaded images, for example, if you're going to upload a print and cut image, I had one person worked with them for quite a while to try to figure out what was causing their problem. They had these clip art images for day planner stickers, I guess, and they were, at surface looked like real simple images. But I had her email one to me, and it was a full 8.5 by 11 300 dot per inch image that she was purchasing off of Etsy, and she had a whole bunch of them. So I showed her how to resize those down to like 500 by 500 because she was just wanting to cut like a little half-inch tall stickers, and I think she said after she did that she was able to cut like 96 of them on one page or in one cut. So again, high resolution images. Now the other part of that are very low resolution images, and both of these problems I have links on the screen there for each of those. Those low resolution images around the edges will have very rough edges and create a lot of nodes, and I've also seen someone try to use the magic wand to clean up the background in a photo. So if you had this as a photo of me and you try to use the magic wand to delete this and to delete this cream colored door over here, you notice there's shading here, and so with all that shading, the magic wand is unable to clean all that up, and it left all kinds of little cuts and just kind of pushed things over the edge. So real important for you to understand image resolutions and image dimensions when you're importing images to cut and do print and cut with Design Space, and even just to import them and cut them, not even doing the print part. So if you're going to cut them. The next part is that I see quite a bit of people using Cricut images out of the library or out of the subscription, and they will flatten them and then try to do print and cut with several of those at one time. I've spoken to Cricut about this issue. I don't, they took my information. I don't know if they really are going to look at it or if there's a way they can get around this. But when you flatten an image, it doesn't really flatten it like you would have a JPEG or a PNG. It gives it that appearance, but it doesn't truly flatten it because you can unflatten it. So my theory is that it's having to process the cuts as the paths that it would be if you were just going to cut it. And it's having to deal with that in addition to it being a flattened image and doing print and cut, and it's just too much and can't handle it. So those definitely seem to be a real problem when people try to flatten images and try to do print and cut, maybe a snowflake or something, and they're trying to print and cut 20 of them on a page, and it just won't do it. It's too complicated of a project. I recommend trying to go out and try to find a PNG on Google Images. Go to images.google.com and try to find a snowflake that's a silhouette that you can upload and clean up and cut, and that will work much better for you. Internet speed and internet quality issues. This is one we're going to talk about for a few minutes, and this might be an area where I get a little snarky to make sure people understand that just because you have internet access doesn't mean that it's working well. Just because you pay for a certain amount of internet speed doesn't mean that's what you're getting. The internet access is not like electricity. It's not on or off like a light bulb. A lot of people think that if they're paying for 50 megabits of internet, that's what they have, and that's not the case. And so also, even if you are paying for that, if you are getting that, there are things that can affect how much you're getting on your computer. So we'll go down the list here. I'll try to explain this to you and make sure that everyone has an understanding of why it's important to test your internet speed. The internet is not like electricity. Like I said, it's more like an old cell phone, an old analog cell phone. So if an old analog cell phone, you have the little 5 bars on it, and when the bars got down to like 1 or 2 bars, the conversations started to break up and get some static in there, and that's kind of the way internet speed does. So if there are internet signal quality issues between, for example, if you have a cable modem, cable modems run off of a radio frequency, off of an RF frequency, and if there are signal issues that things aren't quite right, maybe you have too little signal or even too much signal, and the modem will not perform optimally, so you may be getting only half of what you're paying for in speed. So you need to make sure you test that. You can go to speedtest.net and you click the begin test button. Don't click the other buttons that maybe pop up because there's some ads on that page. But the begin test button, let it run the test. And I usually tell people to run this 3, 4, maybe 5 times in a row because you want to make sure the numbers are consistent that it gives you and make sure they're close. So if the 3 important things are ping time, upload, and download speed. Ping time, that's the amount of time it takes to send a packet of data from your computer to a server on the internet and then bounce it back to you. So it's a round trip time. And most broadband providers will be anywhere on average from about 20 to 70 milliseconds on the average, depending on time and some other variables. And so if you're getting less than that, that's even better. So I've seen people say I'm only getting 5 or 10 milliseconds, and that's great. When you start getting up around 100 milliseconds or even higher than that, your internet speed is probably going to be an issue for you. And then you have the upload and download speed. Let's talk about those and how they work together. Download speed is usually on broadband, it's usually faster than your upload speed, so you need to find out what you're paying for with your internet provider. For example, I know I'm paying for 30 megabits of download and 5 megabits of upload speed. And when I run my test, I usually get better than that. I usually get about 35 by 6. So I'm getting really good performance out of my cable provider, and I'm real happy with that. If you are paying for 30 by 5, then you may, when you run your test, you're only getting 15 by 2, then one of 2 things is happening. You either have a problem or you have something causing, using more bandwidth on your network than just your computer. So we'll tackle that one because that's the easy one. So if you have kids in the house using iPads and tablets and phones and other computers, gaming consoles like Xboxes, maybe streaming Netflix and watching YouTube, Roku devices, TiVos, all those things that pull streaming media down online, FaceTime, Skype, videos, things like that. I was at a client site the other day and they had 2 megabits of upload speed for, they only had like 10 or 12 people on their network, and at different times of the day they were having problems with speed. And when I was watching their speed the other day, I was there at their office and all of a sudden their upload maxed out, and I found out the owner of the company was using Skype, and Skype uses 1.5 megabits of upload and download speed. So things like that can use your internet speed, and if you have anything like that going on your network other than just your computer, it could be suspect to be using your bandwidth. The other side of it is if you're not getting that kind of performance, you're not getting close to what you're paying for. And I should point out, if you look at your internet bill, it might say, they usually give them package names. So they'll say something like Turbo 30 for 30 megabits of internet. Well, you need to probably look at their website, see, or maybe even log into your account with your internet provider and see what you're paying for and what your upload and download speeds should be. So, when you're browsing the internet, most traffic is coming downloads. It's coming down from the websites to your computer. The only upload speed usually is if you're sending an email, or if when you go to a website, it has to send that request out, and then it downloads all that data to your computer to show you a website or to play a video or whatever it is. The upload speed is not quite as important. That's why it's typically slower. Now, on the upload speed with Design Space, it is different than regular websites. It requires more upload speed, and it requires a little bit of control, so that when it's sending data, it's also receiving at the same time. And if you have a slow upload speed, you are likely to have shockwave errors as well as other things, probably slowness and other issues as well. How fast does it need to be? That's a common question I get. That's a tough question because Cricket specifies you must have broadband high-speed internet. That is a sliding scale. High-speed internet used to mean that if you were anything faster than dial-up, you were high-speed. So if you had 1 megabit by 256K 15 years ago, you were golden. Today, if you don't have at least 10 or 15 megabits, that's not really, considered very high speed internet. The upload speed, I would say, based on the people I've talked to and helped with some of these issues, and I have them test their internet, when upload internet speeds get below 1 megabit, I start to see problems. A lot of times people will post their upload speeds. I'll say this, I've never had anyone with these types of errors or other errors with internet do their tests, and they rarely will come back and say that their upload speed's over a megabit. Now, some people have other issues going on, and they have had good internet speed and good computer performance and things, but in most cases, I see people with 0.7 megabits or 0.6 megabits all the way down to about 0.4. And so, to clarify, if it's 0.4, that's 400 kilobits. So when you start getting certainly around that 400 to 500 kilobit range, or maybe down around that 600 or 700 kilobit range, that's when I see the most problems. So check on that. A lot of times you find out that you can pay a couple of bucks more a month with your internet provider and get twice the speed that you have now. So I really recommend having probably 2 or 3 megabits of upload speed if you can. If you can get it and if you can afford it, because sometimes the packages get expensive, but that will help you tremendously. If you a lot of people say, I have the fastest internet I can get, or I have the fastest internet anyone can get. Well, that doesn't really apply, because no one has that. You might have the fastest your provider will give you, and if you haven't tested it, if you didn't test it 5 minutes ago, you don't know that it's correct or not. So you have to test it. You can't just go by what you're paying for. So I can't stress that enough. You have to test it. Computer performance is another one we're going to talk about for a few minutes. How new your computer is has almost nothing to do with its performance. We'll talk about two different things: Macs versus Windows PCs. If you have a Mac that you bought new a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago even, it's pretty safe to say that it's going to be a decent performing computer. Probably the only thing that you might see is, as time has gone on, memory requirements have increased. So you may have one from a few years ago that only has 2 meg of RAM, or 2 gigabytes of RAM, or maybe 4 gigabytes of RAM. You may need to upgrade that to get to a better performance out of your operating system. Macs usually are pretty good. Up till past 6 or 7 years. Anything before that, from my understanding, I'm not a Mac guy, so I'm just going based off of what I know. Anything before the last 6 or 7 years in a Mac computer is probably going to start to get too slow, or the operating system is not adequate and it needs to be upgraded. Maybe the hardware needs to be upgraded. Mac, Apple maintains very tight control over the hardware that's in their computer, so you can't really buy a Mac computer that has a slow, crappy processor in it. Well, on the other hand, Windows PCs, Intel and AMD are the two manufacturers of the processors, and they really kind of play a game on consumers, in my opinion, and I hate it. But it's our own fault too. They know that consumers want to be able to buy a $250 laptop. So the way they cut the price down on that is they make and sell these crappy, slow processors that can be put in a new computer. My laptop that I personally use is almost 6 years old. It has an i5 processor, and I think it's a second generation i5 processor, and it is much faster today than many computers that you can buy brand new at Staples or Best Buy or online today. So when it comes to processors, if you go to Control Panel and System in Windows, you'll see your processor and your memory. Your memory is the easy one. It needs to be 4 gigabytes or more. Strongly recommend 8 gigabytes or more. And the processor, if your processor is an and you can use this for a guide to buy a new computer too. If you have an E1 processor, an E2 processor, a Celeron processor, or an Atom processor, those are very slow processors. And I see a lot of this, people having problems, Shockwave plugin errors, or general design space slowness or other problems, and when I have them check that, they'll end up with one of those processors. Now there are some other ones that are slow as well, so I have a video that I'll put the link on the screen so you can, if you want to be a little bit technical, and go watch that and understand how to look up your processor and understand where you stand. You can do that and look at the benchmark score. A good guideline to follow is I would recommend a benchmark score on a processor of 2500 or above on today's computers. So if your processor, if you look it up and it ranks below that, you know, if you get down around to 2000, 1800 to 2000, it's not a question that it won't work, but you are going to be more prone to these issues. Some of the E1 processors are down around 600, so they are, you know, 1/5 or 1/4 as fast as my 6-year-old laptop, and those are new computers that you can buy today. And so those are horrible for performance and are horrible for design space or any kind of heavy work. They're okay for basic web browsing and email, and that's it. So you know, make sure if you, like I said, just like with the internet, I got a lot of people that say that's not the problem because my computer is only 6 months old, or it's only 3 months old. I bought it last week or whatever, and it doesn't matter. So if you don't understand the difference between an E1 processor and an i5 processor right now, then you don't know your computer's not the issue. So you have to investigate those things and look them up and understand them. The next topic is antivirus software. A lot of people ask me what antivirus software I recommend. I recommend AVG antivirus. I've also used Trend Micro for many years with zero problems out of either one of those. They're very lightweight, non-invasive, and very effective at protecting you. AVG has a free version, and I have a video that shows you how to download and install that. There is a newer version that just come out recently, so the screens probably look a little different than on the install, but for the most part it's the same principles. So the four that I really hate so far are Norton, McAfee, Avast, and WebRoot. In my experience, over the past 20 plus years I've been in the business, those four antivirus softwares cause more problems with performance than anything I've seen, especially ones that are labeled as internet security suites. For example, Norton 360, that puts all the software on your computer that tries to monitor everything for you and protect you and keep you safe and all those things. They put extensions and plugins in your browsers that really affect performance and really can interfere with the design space and other things on your computer too. So I really recommend switching, if you have one of those, to switch to AVG. Preferably that's the one I use, and if you have it, if you have a license for it, Trend Micro. The other one that is really popular out there, it's almost always rated the most effective and the least invasive antivirus software, is Kaspersky. I personally have never used it. However, I've never installed it. However, I will say that in over 20 years of being in this business, I've never heard a negative word about Kaspersky. So I will recommend it based on that. So Trend Micro, AVG, Kaspersky. Stay away from Norton, McAfee, Avast, and WebRoot. And so those are things not guaranteed to fix your problem, but they are steps you can take to try to resolve it. And it's not going to be a negative experience. You're going to make a move in the right direction if you do that. Third-party toolbars and things in your browsers, such as plugins, security toolbars, the Ask Search toolbar, all these things, they add to the processing and memory usage on your computer and kind of make your browser unstable. So I would get rid of those things. If you're using Chrome, Google makes a software removal tool. So if you were to search for Chrome SRT, software removal tool, you'll find that pretty quickly, and it will go through the Chrome browser and strip out all the garbage that is in it. You can also scan for malware using Malwarebytes Free Edition, and I have a video on that. Here's the link to it. And I really recommend you taking time to check your system for malware. I check mine about once a month. Even as protective as I am and guarded as I am, I still find one or two little things that seep into my system somehow every few months. So I've had people tell me, I think the top one so far had more than 5,000 malware items on their computer, and they said it ran like it was new after they cleaned it up. So that's a big one that a lot of people don't realize. They say, well, I have antivirus software, so it's not that. Malware and antivirus are two separate things, so don't confuse the two, and always check for it. The easy things you can do: clear your cache and restart your computer. And I think in just about every browser you can hit Control-Shift-Delete. I think in Mac it might be Shift-Command-Delete, but I'm not positive on that. But Control-Shift-Delete on Windows, and the browser will bring up your clear cache dialog box. It's not your internet history. History is just a list of the websites that you've been to. Cache are temporary internet files. For example, if you go to a business website and their logo is up in the corner and it downloads that website, that web page, the next time you go to it, if that logo hasn't changed, it will use the one that's cached on your computer and stored locally to make it bring it up faster and reduce the internet traffic. So that is cache. Now cookies, it's probably a good idea to clear those, although you can lose your stored passwords and some things like that. But usually if I suspect there's a problem where I need to clear my cache, I'll go ahead and clear my cookies as well. So just some advice on that. You can also, a lot of times you can get around some of these problems by using the iPad app to, if you have for example, if you have a project that has the too many layers that, like I spoke of in the beginning of the video, a lot of times if you have an iPad, you can use the iPad app to open that project and get to it. Why do you not get those errors on the iPad? Because the iPad does not support Flash. It does not rely on it. So using the program on the iPad will get you past this a lot of times, and you can be able to open your project and cut it from there rather than having to deal with the problems on your PC. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. Again, the link to my blog post is in the video description down below, and it has kind of a written description and links to all the videos that apply to these problems. And I just wanted to get this out there for everyone. I know this is a long video. It's a long time to sit here and let me talk about these things that you really don't care about. You just really want to get back to your crafting and make it work. But unfortunately, the way I look at it, the Cricut Explorer and Design Space have a lot of power and flexibility to be able to upload your own images and do all these great things with it. And unfortunately, that it's kind of like I view it as a superhero. That power and flexibility comes with great responsibility, because you can easily break it. And I really wanted to get this out there so that someone, hopefully this will help you guys and help you realize how important it is to check for some of these things that off the top of your head you may ignore them and think that you just, that's not the problem or whatever. It's very important to check them all and try to narrow down what your problem is if you're having these issues.
If my video has been helpful to you, please subscribe to my channel. And after you subscribe, be sure to click the little gear and check this box so that you'll receive an email notification when I upload a new video. You can also help support my channel by making a small donation on patreon.com/Troy Young.